Welcome to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain, your talk show for insights on the criminal justice system, community issues, and public safety in Orange and Osceola counties. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he dives into the issues that matter most to you, keeping it real every step of the way.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to our weekly edition of Community Conversations. I am State Attorney Andrew Bain, and I am the State Attorney for the 9th Judicial Circuit. We have a great show with you this afternoon, and we're going to talk about a lot of amazing things that, of course, we have going on with our circuit and with the people that are involved. And so we had a great opportunity last week to partner with our partners with Central Florida Urban League. We've been doing this now with the Central Florida Urban League for a while, and we do community forums all throughout Central Florida. And so we've been focusing a lot at the beginning of our adventure, a lot of the Pine Hills and Paramore areas of the circuit. But we've expanded. We have now held a forum in South Apopka, and it was a great opportunity to speak with the girls at Lanes out there in South Apopka. So big shout out to them and the great work that organization does in raising amazing young women into incredible adults. And it is one of the things that I'm always passionate about. Always trying to bridge that gap between law enforcement and our community. We want to build understanding. We want to build trust. We want to build an opportunity for people to not be afraid of them, to see them as the people they are. They're just somebody else's son or daughter, and we want to be able to have interactions that way because their job and their goal is to keep us safe and to make sure that no harm is going to come to our community. And so we need to make sure that we're building strong relationships with our law enforcement partners. It is a great partnership that we have because I do the police forums, and you've also heard me talk about de-escalation trainings that we do with law enforcement. So I know the video of Tyreek Hill went crazy on the internet about not this Sunday, but the Sunday before. And we talk about those type of interactions with law enforcement and how to de-escalate when things are getting heated or tensions are really high, because the goal of any traffic stop is that you go home and the officer gets to go home and then everybody goes home alive. And so that is the biggest thing. My job as your state attorney is to preserve life. I want to make sure that we're trying to preserve as many lives as we can in the process of what we do. So that's why I come on to share about what's happening. I come on to share about all the things that are happening in our circuit. The last thing I kind of want to talk about, which is a little bit more in depth, is HB 1365. And that is House Bill 1365, otherwise known as the homelessness bill that is being matriculated through our legislature right now. And it has been signed by the governor, so it will become law and is law and become effective October 1st. And so there are a lot of nuances to this bill, but the concerning thing that I have for the bill is that it has the potential to increase the number of homeless people that are arrested on a regular basis. Depending on how each municipality and county decide to deal with their homelessness issue, it may become an issue for our system, our criminal justice system, because the law allows for people to be sued if they allow people to sleep in public in unauthorized areas. So they're sleeping on the street, they're sleeping on the sidewalk. It talks about public areas, which is a very vague and broad statement. It talks about, we think about encampments, we think about all the things that come along with homelessness. And so for unsheltered people, it is very difficult to address every aspect of homelessness, because you have the chronically homeless, you have transitionally homeless, you have people that are homeless because of various reasons, whether it's a medical condition, whether it's they lost their job. And my biggest thing that happens that I really look out for, and it's an effect that people don't talk about enough, is that when people become victims of crime, a lot of times that causes them to become homeless, either because of medical bills or because where the crime occurred was their house. And that's the only place they had to live and they could afford to live. And so it is, coming upon me to be in discussions with our community leaders about solutions to this problem. And it's just not. And you guys say, what's the state attorney have to do with this? Why is he involved? Well, there's some other issues that come along with the bill. If a municipality or county runs out of beds at their homeless shelter, they can designate an encampment where they had to provide mental health and substance abuse, which that's great. The mental health and substance abuse, that's a good thing. But they don't talk about not allowing weapons. Right now off of 192 in Osceola County and in Orange County off of Mercy Drive, those are just two of the encampments that I know of that have registered sex offenders that live there because they cannot find places to live because of the requirement for them to register. And so they live in the woods on public land. And so are we going to now break up those encampments, scatter those people that are required to register so I don't know where they are? And are we going to then put them inside the same encampment with other children? That is a big concern of mine when it comes to what we're going to do when it comes to this bill. So we took some great first steps and first conversations with a meeting that I called between myself, Commissioner Mike Scott of Orange County, Commissioner Emily Bonilla of Orange County, and Commissioner Shan Rose of the city of Orlando. And we had a great discussion with some of our other community partners, whether it was from Christian Services Center and other community providers to talk about what can we do. And so Commissioner Shan Rose had proposed back in 2019 the possibility of a community court for homeless, called like a homeless court. This is not a new concept. This is a concept that's been practiced in Sarasota and in Miami and other places inside the country. But it is we have to design one unique to our homelessness issue. So we saw, the homelessness is not the same everywhere. There's some similarities, but the resources and things and how we treat it are different everywhere in the country. And we really want to look forward to providing a resource-based solution to this problem. And with the help, hopefully, of the county and the city, we can provide some kind of transitional housing, emergency housing. We can increase that, as well as services for mental health, substance abuse, job training, soft skills training, trauma-informed training, and different ways so that people can move themselves out of being homeless and into a more productive situation. And so those are just a little bit about what was going on last week. Everybody that knows me and has a familiarity with my calendar, it is jam-packed all the time. I'm trying to run around and address a lot of the issues that we have in our community, especially around criminal justice. And so the two guests that I have a series of guests and one group that we're going to talk to. And then I have another guest that we're going to cover two very important areas that we're talking about. So if you're watching this on Facebook Live or Instagram Live or YouTube, you get to see that I'm not in my office right now. It's because I am at Westgate to talk to a conference on a panel for Victoria's Voice. So Victoria's Voice is a foundation that was created by David Siegel and his family, and because of an overdose that happened with his daughter. And we're going to learn about substance abuse and why that happens to kids, and what can we do to prevent overdoses when it comes to children, and how we can protect our public, especially when it comes to narcotics, the use of Narcan. We're going to have a big discussion about all that kind of good stuff in a little bit. But first, I want to talk to some great guys that invited me bowling about a month ago when they were kicking off their fundraisers for their organization and Redemption Homes. And Redemption Homes is an amazing organization that I got the chance to learn about. I got to learn a little bit more about the foster care systems and availability that we have in our community. And so the big statistics, if people don't really know that kids in foster care, if they are not well addressed or taken care of by the time they're 25, guess what? They are in our prison systems. So we're going to talk about ways that these gentlemen are working in our community to prevent that. I saw you guys open up a new home the other day. I was stuck in a meeting, but I watched a little bit of it on live when you guys were streaming. So it looked amazing and a great time. So, gentlemen, welcome. Tell me how you guys are doing.
How you doing? Thank you. Appreciate it.
So talk to me about Redemption Homes. You guys told me this story, but you two guys told me the story, but you got to tell the listeners the story. Tell us about what is Redemption Homes? How did you guys get into foster care and all that kind of stuff? And why is this guy always wearing sunglasses wherever he goes? You like everybody.
I love my
glasses on.
I love my
you ever get that one uncle that wearing glasses, huh?
I love my sunglasses. I'm Frankie Ford, one of the co-founders here at Redemption Home. I got into the foster care system about 24 years ago. Started at the Devereaux Foundation. Branched off about 2 years ago, and we stepped out into this field. Myself, Mr. Gray, and Mr. Marcus, who will introduce themselves in a minute. And we had an idea to to make an imprint on the young men's lives that we're trying to serve here in the foster care system. So redemption, to redeem yourself, second chance. We're licensed through DCF. We have 4 homes in the West Orlando, 3 homes in West Orlando and 1 in Nicoya. Each home is licensed through DCF, 5 beds per home. It's at-risk young teenagers, boys from 13 to 17 years old. I'm gonna let Mr. Gray take over and give you his spiel.
Thanks for having us, Andrew. Again, my name is Mr. Gray, Bain Gray. I've been in the business about maybe 13, 14 years. And, part of our mission was to, we've been at the big companies. We've seen what it looks like when these kids come out of their personal homes. They get thrown into these big facilities. It's 15 to 20 different personalities all under one roof. So when we stepped out 2 years ago, like Mr. Ford said, we changed the mold a little bit. We tweaked it. We made it more of a home. That way these kids will want to come home, watch TV, get a good meal on the table. We teach them a lot of discipline. We hold them accountable. Well, what we're really doing is we're shaping these young men. Shaping these young boys, rather, and turning them into men eventually when they become 18 to 21. We have the full spectrum. We have a complete wraparound service when they age out at 18, Mr. Bain. I'm not sure if we mentioned this to you before, but we also have an 18 and up program. So we typically have them from 13 all the way up until they're about 20, 23, 24 years old. So it's a complete wraparound service.
My name is Marcus James. I don't have as long in the business as these 2 gentlemen, but we all kind of started out together at Devereaux, and we did see some changes and some different things that we could do. I don't want to say better, but maybe it's just different. And we've been able to achieve that. One of our successes is that, one, we take God where we go. So we always ask him to order our steps. Mr. Ford is saying that all the time to us, about him ordering our steps. So we definitely want to continue to keep God first. We say that to the kids. We don't press them or anything like that, but we definitely, let them know that it's a higher power that's looking out for them. And that's one of the things that we definitely teach as well, is that just because you're here doesn't mean, or that you're in foster care, that this is the end for you. And that life doesn't have to be as difficult here at Redemption Home as it probably was in the past before we got it. Now you have some people in your life that you can trust, and that's going to show up for you. We're always at our home. We're always there. We will be there later on today. We're going to be there tomorrow. And we're going to be there the next day. This is a 7 days for us. So we show up. We have a relationship with all of our kids. They don't just know that we own the place. They know that we care. And that's been our formula to make sure that we maintain and keep our hands in it at all times and let them know that here you have hope for a better way.
So let me do a little bit of legal, do my judge and lawyer thing for a second. And so how people wonder how kids end up in the foster care system a lot. And people hear about like, well, foster care kids and, what does that mean? And there's a lot of negative implications about that. And so foster care is a part of our DCF programs that we have in the state of Florida. So when a child has been abandoned, abused, or neglected, that's the standard. So abandoned, abused, or neglected, the state can take action to shelter that child from that from being abandoned, abused, or neglected. And the standard for that is the best interest of the child. So every decision decided to made is from start to finish, from whether it's DCF investigation, the judge signing the order to cause the shelter, the temporary shelter, and then all the way through the what we call dependency court. That process is all about what's the best interest of the child. And sometimes the child is temporarily in foster care, and sometimes the parents' parental rights are permanently revoked, and that child is permanently a ward of the state and then ends up in foster care and can be adopted at that point. And so this is, I'm with you all. I am a believer, and so one of our commandments is to look after the widows and the orphans, and these are the group of children that we're talking about right now. And so a negative implication that goes around foster care. I want to kind of get you guys. Why is that? Like, why do people have this negative thing when they think about foster care?
I just think with the kids, the trauma that they've been, dealt with, the kids themselves have a hard time of trusting adults. So you hear foster care, they'll automatically, every time we open a group home, we try to invite the neighbors, the public to come out, show them what we're doing, let them understand the trouble. Because when you say group home, everybody does get scared, and Andrew. But I think it's a lot of stigma of the trauma and pain that the kids have, and they're out, they're basically out leashing their pain towards other people. So you see this kid that has behavioral or mental problems. It's just a lot of trauma that they've been dealt with. So we're trying to peel back that trauma one layer at a time, and at the same time gain their trust, because they do not trust adults. So I think that's one stigma behind them. I think Mr. Marcus wanted to chime in and give another example.
Well, what we've learned as well is that a lot of these kids are good kids. They just look bad on paper. And for whatever reason, they do show those behaviors sometimes. And just like Mr. Ford said, just peeling back those layers, making sure that they're working with a counselor, making sure they have mentors, people that show them that there's a better way of doing things than just lashing out. A lot of these kids come in, a lot of these kids come with certain traumas, and it's just a matter of getting through that trauma and showing them that these feelings are going to be there, but just how do you handle these feelings? So that's one thing that redemption does stand on as well. We're going to peel back those layers. We're going to try to find out the root of why you're acting out. And I believe people only see that side of a kid a lot of times. They only see they may lash out, may be violent, they may not be as good of a student in school, and that's the only thing that they see. But there is a loving kid that's in.
And we bring to the forefront in our media platforms. We try to be as transparent as possible. So we have a youth that is doing good at school, or actually enjoying the hour, or actually have an accomplishment within DCF. We try to display that, because like Mr. Marcus says, we sometimes only see the negative. So we try to put as much as we can positive on social media to show them that, hey, these are individuals, they need love just like, the next person needs.
Unfortunately, a lot of we've seen pretty much everything, with our we have some kids that's been in the system for so long, they learn the game, in the negative way. So, unfortunately, when they don't like the program, they know how to get themselves out. They know how to blow it. some of our kids rather have been to 50 to 100 different programs, and they're only 14, 15 years old. Uh, you can potentially get some that's fresh in the system. You know, they got taken away a month or two ago. Those are a little easier to reach, you know, but the ones that's been in it for a while, they, for lack of better words, give the foster care system a bad name because of the behaviors they tend to portray when they don't want to be there anymore or when they don't get their way. And that's a lot of the things that we deal with. And those are some of the layers before mentioned that we're peeling back. Those are some of the layers. And it's, you know, it takes time. You know, I wholeheartedly believe that we're changing that mold. We're getting them at a very young age. We're peeling those trauma layers back. Sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes a year, or even longer. You know, it's no true science to it. It's just a method that we're applying, and I believe that it's working.
I realize that we're doing this by ourselves. So there's a lot of people that have invested in this too. A lot of good people that understand that these kids need extra help. They need extra attention. They need extra love. So we do have a lot of other people that have, partnered with us just in terms of mentorships. So showing the kids, like I said, a better way of doing things. So we're trying to change that state, but we're going to continue to need people like yourself shining a light on that particular subject. And I'm sure we'll win this battle if we keep fighting.
So we've been following the show. You heard me talk with Rachel Shaw from PJI, which is our Peace and Justice Institute, and we talked about PACEs and the trauma that we're talking about is that type of trauma where it is both environmental, something that's happening to them. It's also something that is happening, part of their history. These things are going on, the family structures, all those things bring about different levels of trauma when we talk about these types of situations. So that's just kind of giving you guys talking about the layers of trauma. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about because your parents abused you. You may have been physically abused, sexually abused, mentally abused. You might have seen. We have, unfortunately, some situations where we have, especially in domestic violence, homicides, where one parent kills the other parent. Now the child maybe now ended up in the foster care system because you had parents kill each other, and so there is several things that happen to why kids end up in the foster care system. And unfortunately, what I feel like, I want to see if you guys can comment a little bit about this, is because there's a little self-blame when it comes to doing that, because they feel like if this is happening because I did something, not because somebody else made a choice that is now affecting me. And so I don't know how you guys are working on to get them to understand that, because there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of guilt when I deal with this population. There's a lot of guilt in, kind of how I got here and, kind of thing like that. So I don't know what you guys are seeing on your side.
To piggyback off that, a lot of patience and reassurance. Just for patience to kind of deal with the trauma that they're going through, and the reassurance that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Especially in a situation like you gave where a parent killed another parent and all of a sudden, to no fault of the kids' position, they're in foster care. So patience, reassurance, and then we tell all our staff not to take anything personal that these kids may lash out on you. Because once you take it personal, the game is over. They've essentially won. Andrew.
I got you. So there's this crazy interplay between what I do at the criminal justice system and foster care, and a lot of those kids end up, unfortunately, with me. So I guess talk to me about what's your plans on how you are going to. We talked about trauma, and so what are tools that you guys are deploying to help them not end up back in our criminal justice system?
I was just gonna say, first off, we do have their sheets, so we understand the trauma. We're able to read about the kid before they actually come into our care. So we alert our staff on things that's gonna trigger this kid. So we don't want to trigger them to act out And we understand why they're acting out, like I said, because we understand their history. And we normally do that, go through it, go through their history, have a game plan on how can we help this kid. So a lot of times, even if we don't have the words, then we're going to work with a counselor. We're going to work with some kind of mentor or something like that, excuse me, to make sure that we help this kid get through whatever trauma that they went through. Because sometimes it's not going to be our words. It's not going to necessarily be our actions. They may have to go through a therapist, someone that's a professional that's dealt with these situations before. And we're going to just continue to work with them and partner with different agencies so we can definitely help kids.
I think being proactive. Means a lot. Before they get down there to the criminal justice system, having educate them on the hey, if you continue to go down this path, so bring in a lot of guest speakers, whether it be ex-felons, people that has done time but now productive citizens in this world. So being proactive, educating them, and bringing in the community to reinforce the education that we're saying ourselves to them.
So we got a question from our audience. I think it's really surrounding, do you guys deal with reunification? Or do you work with the parents as well?
Yes. Yeah, but Mr. Gray onto this one. He had a good reunification story.
Right. We've actually had 2, maybe 3 reunifications since we've been open in last year, 2023. We're real big on it. Getting the families that can actually be involved with the youth, but that is the thing. Sometimes they can't even be interactive. You do have some cases like that, but the ones that are, we welcome them in. Again, I'm not the biggest advocate of social media, but ever since we've started this thing, I've realized that you can actually use it and make it a tool. So I think because of our transparency and the things that we put, that we advertise, people are so warm to it, and they're so happy to help. So some of the parents that aren't as active, they can see it on social media that their youth is in good hands. So we welcome that. We welcome family support.
All right. So you guys, I'm running out of time with you all. I got to get your commitment. So October 5th, we're going to have Mr. Williams reach out to you again. I need you to commit that you guys are going to come to our Thriving Family series. We're going to talk about some money. We're going to talk about, entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about financial literacy with our families. And one of the things I want to talk about is diverse families, which includes our foster care families. And so strengthening those well as part of my mission, not just the regular mom and dad or a mom or grandma and child, including our foster care families. Those are important to me as well. So I want to make sure that you guys can make sure you come out to Entrepreneurship Center over on Colonial. We're going to do a big workshop and talk about giving them another tool. We talked about another tool in their tool belt to help them get out of the situation they found themselves in. So I appreciate you all. See you guys next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to the main event. With Brandy. And so we are here at Westgate, and Brandy's going to tell us why they bring good old State Attorney Andrew Bain all the way out here to Turkey Lake to talk about substance abuse.
Well, it's really important that you're here because we're having a great conversation today about substance use and the opioid epidemic that we're seeing. We're seeing death rate of over 100,000 people last year to fentanyl overdose, and we want all hands on deck to combat this problem. So Victoria's Voice Foundation is hosting an event here today. It's founded by David and Jackie Siegel from out here in the great state of Florida. And they unfortunately lost their daughter Victoria years ago to an overdose. And what they say is all the money in the world wouldn't have saved their daughter, and it couldn't have saved her. But what could have is education and prevention. And so had they known some things ahead of time, they could have done some things differently. And so they don't want their loss to be everyone's loss. And their efforts include reaching out to the public and letting them know about what things could have been done to save Victoria. And some of those things are education around substance use, letting people know that it could happen to anyone. It's the one thing that crosses political lines, it crosses race and gender and socioeconomic status lines. Anyone and anyone anywhere could be affected by substance abuse and mental health. And we can all agree as an entire country, at least on this, that we don't want to lose our kids to something as senseless as substance use. So we have implemented a few strategies with Victoria's Voice. One is education, going out and speaking to families, and we have some programs for that. One is vital signs, that we go out and we tell the families and parents through churches and schools and affiliations and organizations all the signs that you could be looking for your kids, so that you don't have to miss the signs that David and Jackie missed when it came to Victoria. And then the other part is Narcan distribution. And I don't know if you carry Narcan, Attorney Bain, but
Mina Lou gave me, so I need to carry Narcan. So
yes. So we carry it. Not only do we carry it, we ask everyone to carry it. You just don't know when and where you're going to need this life-saving drug. So I want to give you a little bit of a demonstration of how easy this is to carry. There's an open prescription. You can get it at any pharmacy, and you can get it at any Victoria's Voice. If you reach out to us, we'll be happy to send you some. This one drug can save a life. So we are seeing over 100,000 deaths last year to fentanyl overdose, and we expect to see that many again this year. What we didn't see was 300,000 deaths to overdose, and it's because of this simple little medication, Narcan. And if you can see, it's very light and easy to carry around. It's open prescription. It's accessible to all people. And what we want is we want you to carry it. We want you to use it. So it looks all nice and fancy in this packaging. And if you're like me, you like the aesthetic of keeping something nice and neat. But David Siegel also tells everybody, and so does Sheriff Lima out here and me, I like to keep packaging, but you want to keep it accessible. Open it up and put it in your purse. I was in New York last week speaking for a conference, and I passed someone who was overdosed on the street, immediately gave the assistant Narcan, and they utilized it to resuscitate the person. This is a life-saving drug. It doesn't hurt someone. You can't get high over it. You simply insert it into the nasal cavity, spray, and then you can do the other side as well. You can wait a little while, and the person should immediately revive if they've overdosed on fentanyl. Guess what else? It does not hurt them. If you didn't use fentanyl and you were just taking a nap, if I accidentally sprayed this right into your face, Attorney Bain, nothing would happen. You would be okay. So you can't hurt someone. You can only save a life, and it is incredibly impactful in our battle to save lives right now to fentanyl. The issue with fentanyl is many people aren't drug users. They're not drug users that are dying. It's not just substance abuse patients. It is people who were at a college party and wanted to take an Adderall, were suffering with pain and took a Percocet from a friend. And what happens is it's a counterfeit pill, or it's laced with fentanyl and it's pressed in to look like an actual pill, and they are poisoned by the fentanyl that's coming into the country. So having this on you can save a life. It's super easy to carry around, and we just really encourage that.
So I want to get my education piece right now. Is this fentanyl crisis is a really big problem. So the beginning of last month, I did a press conference after our grand jury leveled an indictment against a local gang here in Orange County that caused the death of 4 people because of selling fake oxycodone pills. I just direct filed a juvenile recently that was selling guns and fentanyl at school. Same thing, fake oxycodone pills that could have been given one of those children that he was selling them to could have died from. So this is a major issue, people. This is you hear about the border and different things like that. When I think about the border, I think about 2 things. I think about human trafficking, and I think about fentanyl. And the way the cartels are pushing this drug into our country, the amount of fentanyl that we recover on a yearly basis is enough to kill every single person in the state twice, at least twice. Some estimate almost 3 times. And so this is a big issue that we need to address. And I'm super excited that I'm here with you all. And I want to talk a little bit about, so we talked about prevention, right? So when I met with, your boss, our good friend, Mina Lou, who dodged me here today. She told me like, hey, we talk about, well, Mr. Siegel and Jackie think that we should, definitely invest in things like life skills. So like, why do you think life skills would have played a role and I read Victoria's journal. And so tell me, why do you think that it would have played a role in saving her life if we were able to give that to her?
I think that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that, but shooting from the hip, I know that most of us are barely getting by on most days. There's so many days where I feel like only so many days a year that I feel like I'm really killing it. Okay. And I'm a professional. I have all the letters. I have all the credentials, just like you. But most days I feel like, whew, I just made it. And that's with a whole toolbox of skills. So we were just talking to the young guys from the house that, that they are talking about building this skill set for these kids. The same is true for all of us, even us accomplished adults like you and I, So the difference that it could have made for someone like Victoria or kids today is the ability to push through uncomfortable situations. I can give you a little bit of what I talk about in the Victoria Voice Vital Signs, a technique. It's called TAME. Tell, avoid, manage, and escape, TAME. And it's a life skill tool for kids to be able to figure out what do they need to pull upon to get out of a situation. I remember being a kid and Nancy Reagan's slogan of just say no. And that would have worked fine, I guess, in my nerd group. Like I was with the nerds. If I said no, it's probably fine. Now I hang out with a ton of guys who use hardcore drugs. Just say no would have not cut it in that situation. Okay. Just being truthful. But if I'd had some life skills and I was in a situation like Victoria, I could have lied. I could have manipulated. I could have known who was I going to tell, because it's not going to be your parents. Everybody thinks it's going to be us. They're going to call us and say, Mom, come get me. They're doing drugs. That's not it. They're going to talk to their friends. They're going to talk to their coaches, their pastor. They're not necessarily calling up mom and dad. If you've ever seen a Disney show, what happens when a kid's in trouble? Another kid comes to the rescue. It's always they call a peer. So if we could just kind of give them these life skills to intervene in the moments that are most impactful or consequential in their life, it can help them get out of a situation that's really bad. And I think in Victoria's case, and I've read the journal and I've been with the organization for some time, she really was lacking that. She just didn't know who to talk to and how, or how to get out of a situation. I live in Louisiana. And if you know anything about us, LSU is a big party school. I'm not a partier because, as I mentioned before, I am a nerd. And so we don't party by definition. And so at LSU games, there's a lot of pressure to be a drinker. I don't like the taste of it. And I really like Diet Coke. So what I would do is pretend that my cup had alcohol in it. And they'd be like, you want a drink? Got one. Thank you. Ugh, I know we're all feeling it. This kind of stuff to get through, because it would really be uncomfortable to explain, no, I just don't like drinking. No, I really don't want that. I don't like the taste of beer. It would be really uncomfortable. And then people are like, well, you don't fit in. Why are you so uppity? Why won't you party with us? That kind of thing. So giving yourself some skills on how to handle the situations, whether you're going to tell the truth or get out of it or manipulate or avoid, to manage situations, could have saved Victoria's life, but she didn't have that.
Yeah, I always, I've talked about it on the show a few times, and I call it the danger of loneliness.
You're
I guess, and so how, I run into this problem a lot in my work, whether it's dealing with, we recently had a law enforcement officer that committed suicide. We've had other people that have done things, I think, because they thought they were alone, and so the self-harm and things like that. So how do we help our friends? And I think that's really the question I've always asked, and I get a chance to ask this question. So how do we help our friends and our family members and our community partners, our children, especially? I'm a dad. I have an 8 and a 7-year-old, and so how do I, it's like a lot of parents, we all spend this time like, so how do I help them get past this thing that they're where they are, or help them move forward or help them not feel alone and not feel like they have to, do these things that are harmful to themselves. So
I think that's a good question. Something I like to tell my patients is isolation fuels despair. Isolation fuels despair. So if you're feeling bad, being alone only increases the bad feelings. Compassion actually is an antidote to anxiety. Compassion and connection are the cure for depression. So even though it's the last thing you want to do when you're feeling depressed or you're feeling anxious, putting yourself in a place to feel compassion for someone else or to feel connected to someone else is actually the antidote and the cure to those things. So if we are starting to feel bad, we tend to isolate. And our kids are the worst at this because they'll isolate on their phones and they feel like they're connected to people. And what they're really getting is cheap connectivity. Because if you're on your phone and you heart a TikTok or whatever it is, that does release some dopamine, which is the helpful mechanism in the brain, right? We want dopamine, but it's a cheap calorie. It's an empty calorie. It's like eating Frosted Flakes for breakfast versus eating oatmeal. So
you taking on the tiger?
I like them.
You taking on the tiger today?
So if you do those kinds of things, yeah, you're going to struggle. The best thing we can do for them is when they feel alone and they feel despair is to remember that isolation fuels it. Pull them out, put them in something that makes them feel accomplished or doing or caring for others. An exercise that we talk about is like put your hand on your chest and like think of something that you really care about, please. Because something that no bad feelings, but only good feelings. And when you breathe in, you can feel that you breathe deeper in those moments. I'm not a woo-woo person. I'm the opposite of that. I am a cutthroat person, but we know this scientifically affects your brain. So even when I'm anxious, I'm like, oh, well, here's the whole kitten thing again. And let me try to take a deep breath. Let me stop. Let me touch grass. Let me talk to people. Let me connect to others, because what I really want to do in isolating is going to make me feel much worse.
So you're like me. I want to give my child a flip phone when it's time for them to get a phone. They have iPads, and the only reason why they have them is because they have. They do play games and stuff like that, but because it's for school. But I don't think I'm ready to give them an actual phone, because I'm like, I make them leave it at home. They don't go. It doesn't go out to dinner with us. I make them sit down. It's like, hey, how you doing? We get to talk.
Let me see your eyes. Yeah, that face film in my womb. I want it to look back at me. Yeah.
Yeah. And my 8-year-old's get to the point where she's like kind of that tween, kind of turning to that age. She's already getting super emotional and things. So I get to poke with her, and she's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, Daddy's here.
Yeah, God bless it. Mine are 14 and mine's 13 and 15. So, it's rough. I feel you.
Get to talk. We get to talk and make sure you're alive. Like, let's do this for Daddy. I want to make sure that you're okay. So, we're gonna do some checking in here.
Yeah.
And I guess, how do we help, again, our friends, our kids, our community partners? How do we help them with accepting help? That's another thing that, that goes along with this whole process, because we identified there's a problem. Somebody knows they may have a problem. We talked about, how can we help them? But then a lot of times people, I'm one of those people. I have a hard time sometimes accepting help. Especially if I'm already deep into something. And so, how do we work on helping all those people accept help when it's available to them?
It's hard. I think right before I came here, I had a friend and colleague who was struggling, and someone had called me and told me he was struggling. And I didn't want to interfere. I didn't want to look like I was interstepping in his life, but I was worried. And one thing about working with a lot of guys who are in recovery and a lot of people in recovery is some of their mentalities are right. So what they preach is voicing concern. And so I just simply called him up and I said, listen, I heard some things that are worrisome to me. I love you and I care about you. Come meet me for lunch. And he has said all these excuses as to why he can't come see me and why he doesn't need to see me. And I said, well, I need to see you. I want to see you with my eyeballs. I want to touch your skin and know that you're okay. And I didn't give up. And I think it's hard for us because we're used to respecting boundaries and not looking like we're being nosy or voyeuristic or anything like that. But really to say, I care about you, I see you, and I want to connect with you. Is there a way for us to be closer in this moment? Is really powerful, really, really powerful. And as a therapist, I tell people that all the time. They're worried about saying the right thing. And you could just simply say, I care and I want to be closer to you. And that will open up the door for more conversation.
So, yeah, so let's go a little deeper into that because we just heard from our good friends at Redemption Home, and we're talking about especially so we're here for Victoria's Voice. We're talking about a little bit everybody, but I was focusing a little bit on the children.
Yeah.
Do we, get deeper because these are kids now. You say 50 homes, 100 homes, over their pretty much their lifetime, maybe 10 years or so. That's a home, every few months, maybe we're there for a day, a week. So, how do we get the connection to for these kids to help them, accept, the help that's coming their direction and not, choose, I guess, again, things that will be self-harm because I look at drugs as a self-harm thing.
You're right. Yeah.
That it's just no different than cutting or anything else than that, so how do we get them to accept that type of help?
Yeah, I think the guys from the Redemption Home, the thing that stood out first off, I'm so glad that my camera was off because I was tearing up and I was like, oh gosh, dry your eyes. That's so sad. But the thing that made me tear up because I questioned myself about it was they're doing the exact right thing. They're providing consistency. They're saying, I'm going to be here today and tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And what that offers the psyche, the human psyche, is to say, even though I have experienced this trauma, it doesn't mean that tomorrow will be trauma and the next day and the next day's trauma. There could be some light at the end of this tunnel. So Redemption Home is the light of hope, for these kids who have been exposed to so much and so much neglect and isolation and of course rejection. They're going to feel all of those things through no fault of their own, through the system's faults. They are feeling these things. But I was so touched by what they were doing because that's exactly the intervention that's appropriate. Is consistency and predictability are a good foundation for kids from trauma. So the more that you can say this is the thing and I'm going to keep doing it and it's predictable that if this happens, then this happens. And they start to build trust upon that because of course, who are those kids going to trust? No one. Why would they? They're smart to not trust people. They're smart to manipulate. They're smart to break rules to serve themselves, to keep themselves safe, because that's what they've had to do to survive. So all of their mechanisms that they're using that people tend to label as bad really aren't bad. They're survival skills. Now they're maladaptive to wellness, but they're survival to the hell that they were living through.
So it is always, consistency. I feel like I had this conversation with my wife a lot, and I love her to death. She's amazing. So, Dr. Singh, I love you. But I do preach this a lot in my own house about, hey, whatever we're going to do, you got to be consistent about it. So, whatever path we decide you're going to choose. So, if we want to choose something to do, whatever with the kids, and you say you're going to do something,
got to do it.
Gotta do it. You're tired and this and that, then you want to negotiate with them. I was like, well, this is not going to go over well because, they lose. I mean, they do. The kids lose trust quickly. I mean, there's, unfortunately for me, they're that's why I think she's like, well, I don't even listen to me. I was like, well, what daddy says. They know exactly what daddy means, exactly what he says, what he says. And so they begin to trust that, and then they can depend on that thing. And so I think I find that a lot really difficult in a lot of the the parents I have to deal with, especially the ones I have in the criminal justice system, The lack of, if people think about discipline as you must gotta beat your kids. I'm like,
Right.
no, discipline is about being consistent. It's about setting a standard
Mm-hmm.
and then being consistent about, moving towards that standard.
So
And so how do we, I guess, for me, how do we build that in, in some of these children, where they, or at least hope the parents build that in their children, when we have them. So he talks a little about, how we build out that consistency. Like we talk about being consistent, but, consistent to what? Consistent to, where are we going? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. So like we do what I talk about in the vital signs training for Victoria's Voice and what I do in my real life. These are examples from my real life. I'm also a therapist, but I think of it like as we're one, it's really just a mom role. I don't know why I'm called a therapist. It's really, I'm a mom. But so what it is I think it's building a family constitution of sorts. What are we about? What is our mission? What are our roles? What are our expectations? And what are our limitations or boundaries? And so as a family, that might be different from family to family. When I grew up, there was a lot of screaming in our house, lots of screaming, lots of name calling. Okay. And it wasn't until I got to college and I was screaming and name calling and cursing that I realized that not everybody does that. And I was like, oh, okay, so maybe we don't say these things. And so now that I have my own family unit, it is a thing. It's against our Constitution. We don't scream at each other. We don't name call. And so just right before I left for this trip, I was trying to have a nice little family dinner with my girls and my son, and my husband was out working, and the girls got into it, as teenagers do. Okay, they do. You have this. They just suck, okay.
Is there a love of war? That's what I call it.
Yes, they're doing their little, love war. And so then one of them yells at the little boy, the 4-year-old. And so I had already given multiple cues that we don't scream at each other. We don't name call. We don't do this. And so when she yelled at the boy, then I stood in between them physically. I didn't bow up to him. I'm not yelling. I'm not raising my fist. I didn't make any gestures of fear-inducing gestures, but I did put myself in between her and the youngest. And I said, we don't scream at each other. It's not something we do. If you want to have an outburst like that, the only person to direct that towards is me. Do you want to scream at me? And she didn't. She doesn't want to scream at me. She didn't want to be screaming at them, but her emotions were getting carried away to where she couldn't remember our Constitution. And so I constantly will remind them and give them cues throughout life because they need it, because they're kids. And guess what? They give me cues when I'm losing it. They're like, Mom, remember? And I was like, okay, fair enough. Okay.
They love to turn it around.
Yeah, we all lose it from time to time. We have freedom to discuss our failures and our shortcomings, and we have some grace around that, but we do have a firm Constitution. So the rules that you implement and the boundaries that you set, that's what you have to see through. And you're a lot like my husband. He has to remind us, like, whatever we say, we have to see it through. So don't make a threat that you're not going to be able to do. My thing was, he was like, we grew up with the wooden spoon, and he said, if you get the wooden spoon out, that's it, Well, I can't follow through with it. I don't have the wherewithal. I'm going to giggle. I'm not going to have the strength. I'm going to mess it up. I'm not going to chase a kid with a spoon. It's too crazy, but I didn't know that about myself until I pulled it out. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to get you. And they're like, you're not. And then we all are laughing and mess it up. So it's a good lesson to know, like, if you say something, you have to do it,
I totally agree. I think that is the best way to be consistent. It's almost like what we do it as lawyers, and so the rule of law is very the same way. So our country is actually set up the same exact way, that it's designed to be consistent. It could designed to be the boundaries of how we decide to live as a society. So that's probably why I got drawn to the law. I didn't even know that till today. So you made that comparison. So probably there's the truth about the situation.
It's the truth.
It's the absolute truth about the situation. So we're going to have some good fun in about 5 minutes when I see you on our panel. And so we're going to end our good conversation here. Promise we'll probably come back to this because this is a great conversation to have. especially surrounding the tools that we need to instill in our kids and our friends and our community to make them more resilient. That's the phrase that we use around. I use a lot in the office and in the community. We want to be a resilient community so that, when things don't go the way we want them to go, guess what? We're still going to be okay. We're going to be able to move towards the goal that we set. So Brandy, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'll see you in a little bit.
See you in a little bit.
All right. So, like you said, I told you I had a good show ahead of you today. The guys at Redemption Homes, they do amazing work. So if you get the opportunity to go out and support them, get to actually see them interact and be with their kids, is something to be excited about. I've been working a lot in the foster care system for a while now, partially because I did a lot of work when I was assistant state attorney in the juvenile system, and you find that there's overlap all the time in that respect. And so that is something that we need to happen. So I'm going to give you my motivational minute, and then we're going to sign off here with a little reminder about October 5th, because I'm going to be saying that next week, and the next few weeks after that. And so here we are. This is something that you have to be able to do. We're talking about being resilient. You got to invite the pressure. So you invite pressure, because pressure can turn what is we consider, like you see a small piece of coal, the right amount and type of pressure turns that coal into diamonds. And so you have to be okay with accepting some pressure, some push, some struggle, something that that can make you better. But you have to be able to use that pressure not to crush you, not crush you under the weight, but to mold you, to shape you, to make you into a diamond. And so that is something that is beautiful and wonderful about what we do. And so I want to end the show talking a little bit about we got also October 5th. We're going to be blasted on social media. I'm going to have my community director, a community engagement director, running around, handing out flyers, posting it everywhere. And because we really want to get our families engaged in the business, the business of the family. And so that is one of the things that are the pillars of dealing with root cause issues. So prevention is education. So we talked about education. We talk about poverty and trying to overcome that poverty. And that third part of it is families. And so we want to combine all three of those things in this one we're doing right now on October 5th for our Thriving Family series, because that's really where we want to be. We want to be a community that is educated, because you can't oppress. It's hard to oppress an educated society. Now, you may be able to oppress them for a little while, but not for long. So they're always going to be able to overcome. And number two, we want to provide for the spaces where we can uplift and come out of the poverty that causes crime. And then we want to have that strong family backbone for our community and our society. And so that is the biggest, the biggest thing we're doing. So it's October 5th at the Entrepreneurship Center at the mall. And it's right next to the Planet Fitness. And we're going to be there. We're going to be there making sure that we're going to be able to provide some tools, entrepreneurship school tools to really get us moving as a society. And we're going to talk a lot about that more on our right before the Wednesday show beforehand. But thank you all for tuning in to Community Conversations today, and I'll see you all soon.
You've been listening to Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain. Join us again next Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. for another episode. Looking for real talk on the criminal justice system and how we can work together to make our communities safer? Tune into Community Conversations with State Attorney Bain every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Join State Attorney Andrew Bain as he interviews community leaders and activists, diving into the topics that matter most in Orange and Osceola counties. Get insights, stay informed, and be